also a music major or
Swim and
something, so.
soccer.
I was talking to Jen today about some of the classes. Baseball has been,
Part of the scholarship is music. So
yes,
you
it
have
is.
to-
I'll explain later.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. Humbly, sir.
Hi.
Oh, thank you.
All the testing.
Basically, yeah. Building testing coordinators, definitely.
Cross game that same day in Germantown at Johnson. So there's a lacrosse game, I think it's at 2, so if you're just gonna make a day of it, there's another, I'm trying to make you,
Yes, I like to do that.
yeah,
Big
to do
time.
it all, yes.
Part of my Christmas.
So just a thought.
Okay.
I think it's a team from out of town, they were invited to play in some tournament or something.
You mentioned an invitation, I didn't know.
Yeah, so the Johnson Park is right there by, it's kind of by Forest Hill Arena maybe, is that where I'm
Does it
thinking?
go out?
Not Forest Hill, is it the Target and stuff?
Johnson Road, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
like there's a Target right there or
Yeah.
something, yeah. So
Runs
it's
right
in-
into it,
yeah,
yeah.
It's kind of
okay.
like that.
And I didn't have a glove.
One minute. All right, I've got 5:45, so we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. If everyone would stand for the moment of silence, and then we'll have the pledge. allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Recorder, if you'd call the roll.
Chairman Floyd. Present. Vice Chair Harrison. Present. Deborah Thomas. Present. Jeremy Burnett. Here. Michelle Childs. Here. Superintendent Horrell.
Here. We do have a quorum. Mr. Superintendent, would you lead us through our agenda?
I would. The first item is the opportunity for public comment.
Would anyone from the public like to speak? Hearing none. Next item.
Next item is the report section, starting with the TLN representative update. Ms. Childs?
Okay, Assembly is still in session, and there is a lot of bills, education-wise, so just bear with me. And I'm only highlighting some of them. There's way more than what I'm gonna talk about. But the first one I'm gonna mention is the Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement Act, Tsba, which is, it's the funding overhaul. And last month, Dr. Worrell spoke about it, and if you have any changes to us locally, I'm sure you will mention in your superintendent report. But I don't know that anything's changed except for the amendments that they've added. And there are 4 amendments, and I actually emailed y'all about it because it was very wordy, but essentially they're putting a lot of accountability measures. Specifically, the 4th Amendment is about a goal with 3rd grade students being on track or mastered the ELA portion of the TCAP, which if you'll remember, there's that whole retention bill, and it's based solely on the TCAP. I will jump over to the fact I mentioned last time, that's HB 1077, SB 1225 by Leatherwood and Rose, and that would have offered additional benchmarks as far as, or data for literacy, but that failed in the House Education Instruction in March. Next bill I'm going to mention is Dr. Horrell's been sending emails to me about this because we had asked about this at many different pieces, but it's basically, it's SB 2489, HB 2429, and it's a CTE bill that includes, there's several pieces to it, but one part includes a process for a practitioner to get an occupational teacher license without getting a degree in teaching based on years of relevant industry work experience and a possible industry certification. So far, this one is still live and being heard in the Senate and House, like it's on the calendar. So we are hopeful that this one will actually get passed this time. Mr. Burnett had asked about this bill, HB 1944, SB 1944, the same numbers, by Sapicki and Hensley. There's not a lot on it yet, except it is still live, and an LEA must not allow obscene materials or materials harmful to minors, not in the school library or in the public school or charter school. Next one I'm going to mention is HB 2833, SB 2168, and this was regarding charter bills and funds for charter bills, and I just want to give you an update that on March 15th it was taken off notice, so that one's done. Next one I mentioned last month is HB 2460, SB 2332 by Rudder and Hensley. This was the one y'all had asked a couple questions, but about TCAP scores coming in within 10 days, but on March 30th, it failed in the Senate Education Committee, so it's done. I'm going to mention this one. I hadn't brought this one up yet, but it's still live. So HB 751, SB 1158 by Moody and Hale. It's still active on the calendar, and it allows children with dyslexia to get a voucher. Next is, I mentioned this one last month, is HB 2215, SB 2265 by Ramsey and Nicely. It was changing the dismissal process for non-licensed employees, but it was taken off notice on March 15th. Also mentioned this one last month, HB 2345, SB 2250, Carringer, Lundberg would have allowed non-resident students to enroll if spaces were available. This was taken off notice on March 29th. Another one, I don't think I'd mentioned this one yet, but HB 591, SB 1134 by Williams and Stevens. This was where a public charter school could take over vacant buildings. It was another charter school bill, but it was taken off notice on March 29th. I don't think I mentioned this one yet, but it's HB 2092, SB 2021 by White and Lundberg. At present, as it's been amended, it requires a school board with 10 or more priority schools to transition from an elected board of education to one appointed by the county mayor, and this one's still active. I think that's all I have as far as the highlights.
Thank you, Ms. Childs. Any questions on the TLN report? Mr. Burnett?
Yes, I'd like to have some conversation about 1944. I know it wasn't on our agenda as an item when we put our legislative agenda, but I guess I'm a little concerned about some of the language that I've read, how 1944 would be applied.
Would you just remind everybody what 1944 is?
Sorry, that's the obscene content in libraries. And so.
Wait, it's, I think it's SB 2489 and HB 2420. All right, that's
Yeah,
the
but
practitioner. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
1944, you said.
All right.
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
That's all right. Wouldn't be the first time I was wrong
I
today.
got too many on this
So,
page.
while obviously, I don't think any of us would like to see obscene content, and would actively not have that in our schools, my concern is the application, the process that was outlined, is that if, said Ms. Thomas, Mr. Floyd, Mr. Burnett, and Ms. Childs didn't like something as parents, 5 of us, we could have materials removed from the library or from the school system. She could file a complaint in August, Ms. Thomas, and 8 or 9 parents could have material removed from a library for an entire year simply because they didn't like the title of the book. Seemed to be any fast track, as I read the legislative notes on it. So that has me a little concerned, and I'm wondering if, as a board, we want to take an official position and maybe
Ms. Harrison?
So, and I haven't read all the language or the notes on it, but, so, there not any guidance from the Department of Education on, or would there not be any oversight, I guess would be the right statement, from the Department of Education on, like, this is an approved list and not any provisions for that type of situation? Just so, because basically, parent in the school, let's just go to an extreme, but every parent in the school picked the book. They could take every book on our reading list and say you're not allowed to read it for, if everybody did a complaint or whatever based on what you're describing. So is there not any oversight by the Department of Education on allowed to read, no matter what?
example is one of my concerns. You have someone who takes offense to a certain issue. Gives me some concern, some pause. I didn't read anything in the legislative notes that had exemption. It was, the way it was worded when I read was removed for a minimum of 30 days, period. See anything, again, it's talked about, reviewed a book once, has it been reviewed? Be reviewed every time or considered every time? Our board said, okay, but Carnival said it was. Does a decision of one board impact other boards? List of banned books in the state of Tennessee.
Of course, we're talking about a hypothetical because the bill hasn't passed, and it looks like there is one amendment, so it's hard to really project. But as it's currently amended, as I'm reading from the General Assembly's website, it says that each local Board of Education / public charter school must adopt a policy that allows a parent or legal guardian of a student enrolled in an LEA to report to the director of schools or to the director of the public charter school if the parent or legal guardian is aware of material that is obscene or harmful to minors, and made available through the parent's legal guardian school library. The policy must require the director of schools or the public charter school as applicable to remove the questionable material from each school library under the respective director's control for a period of no less than 30 days, to allow the local Board of Education or governing body the ability to review it. And we don't know what the actual bill will look like or if it will get passed. But as I read that, it would be an LEA to LEA decision. I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Burnett.
For both Ms. Harrison and I, it sounds like it's literally at the individual LEA level, which again, I like that piece because it's about local control. Times could a book be lifted, and is there it doesn't provide the director of schools, the superintendent. Well, no, we're not gonna put this one on we're not removing this one.
As, once it's reviewed, it doesn't say anything. As I don't like it and I wanna complain about it, and then I don't like your answer, so I'm gonna complain about it again next month.
We have a policy now that says parents may make a written request to the classroom teacher that a student not be required to read a book that's about a classroom assignment and alternative assignments. That's a different situation. We're just talking about any old book in any old library, right? So I think we would be wise to see how the legislation plays out. I think that's my thought on it at the current moment.
It states that hold for, as mentioned, a minimum 30 days. It requires the local Board of Education, and whether the material is obscene, harmful to minors, or later than the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board, authorizes any person at any time to petition the local board, consider its determination that the material removed to minors or otherwise inappropriate. It seems vague, and it does seem like it's unclear, like, how many times something could be.
Decides it's okay to read, in the, like saying, okay, but wait, can you change your mind now? I mean, unless there, I mean, I guess there would be new facts, certainly, but if there's not new facts, then why are we, if the board has ruled that it's okay to read, then and that's local control, that's what we strive for. They're creating a path to amendment to the board's decision. The way it sounds like it's worded.
Broad. Have something in place if this room, which to me is a larger deal. If there's a, and having been in the classroom before and having had this be an issue and just providing an alternate assignment, but having the whole library be in every single book that's in there, and until we get some guidance, I don't.
Is that, and again, I'm reading this as I go, and again, we're talking about something that's hypothetical because it hasn't passed and could be amended or being passed. But as I read this amendment further, it states, local board of education or governing body of the public charter school determines that the material is appropriate for students, and the material must be returned to each school library from which it was removed by the respective director upon the local board of education's or the governing body's determination that the material is appropriate for students, or at the end of the 30-day period identified, whichever is earlier. So if you determine that it's, hey, I think you can remove it, I think you can put it back sooner. Now, the first paragraph seems to contradict that because it says no less than 30 days. So I suspect discussion about that in session. So, you know, I don't think we know the answer to that question as it relates to. But I think this board will all agree that if there was material that was obscene or inappropriate for students, we would all want it removed. So I don't think the issue or discussion is surrounding that. It's more of the procedure and process of how to do this.
Right.
So I think we just have to follow this bill and see where it goes. It currently, if I looked at it, I believe it passed the House, but is waiting on the Senate. I think it was in committee in the Senate, scheduled to be heard maybe on April 6th, if I remember correctly. We'll see where that goes. Any other questions on the TLN report? Ms. Thomas?
So I was looking, you know, the bill that was sponsored by Leatherwood and Rose that survive was about TCAPs, using TCAPs for the there's another bill that's HB 1860, one of our TSBA emails, and it's similar. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I believe that one is about, we were there and they were explaining it. Last year's testing was a use it for anything.
Right.
But that bill is so that it can be used only to measure growth, so that if, a school had a poor score last year and then did better this year, and for teacher evaluation, that it could be used for that purpose. But my understanding, it's not about the third grade retention or promotion.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay.
Any questions on the TLN report?
No, thanks for that.
Hearing none, we'll move to the next item.
The next item is the superintendent's report. I do have a few things that I'll share with you. I did want to follow up on the Tsba comment. I would say at this point, or the Tsba report, excuse me. I'd say at this point, kind of based on the look I've taken at it, I do feel like the Tsba funding formula would be beneficial to Lakeland school system. I think one of the terms that gets used a lot is increasingly optimistic, that this will be a way to fund schools that is clear. My understanding, the initial analysis and the follow-up analysis is that it would lead to more money, for Lakeland school system. I think there are some areas where it would be more year to year that maybe makes it feel a little less secure, but most of those items are beyond the base that are more of the permanent things that aren't analyzed year to year. So I think overall, if it goes through, I think it'll put us in a better financial position. One of the changes that has happened was a change from just using the TASR model of local capacity to fund schools to go back to a combination of TASR and Tsba. The consensus in our area seems to be that as long as they're using the county-wide funding capacity to fund the municipal school systems in Shelby County, that is, it's not as much of an issue as to whether they use the TASR or the TASR-Tsba split, which has to do with how much local funds are required to be added into the formula. And apparently using the TASR-Tsba split benefited the vast majority of school systems. So that was what prompted one of the amendments. I'll just go over a few different kind of things that are going on in the school system. We've obviously had, I think, another very successful online registration. We are right now kind of playing cleanup, as we always do, even if there's in-person registration, and making calls to families that we did not hear from to kind of determine what their intentions are. Obviously, with the budget presentation tonight, that drives our revenues, so we do want to get a sense of that. But so far, the numbers that we're seeing come in are reflective of what we usually get after that kind of first wave of registration. There is a lot of activity going on in anticipation of the high school, first high school grade opening at Lakeland Prep. There's a lot of hiring, there's a lot of curriculum work, there's a lot of textbook identification and things going on. So it is definitely a very, very busy time for Ms. Martin, Ms. Decker, and their staffs as well. And we're really looking forward to introducing some of the individuals that have been hired. Obviously, it's a bit premature in some cases to say who those folks are. We know some of them, but looking forward to introducing these great people to the community. I will just go ahead and note, we need some math candidates. This is a statewide issue. If there's anybody listening to this broadcast, anyone, anywhere, high school math teacher and is certified to teach math, we would love to talk to you and consider you for the positions we have at the high school level. It's been, I think, just really interesting of late, and as things pick up speed, a lot of this has to do with the future high school. But if we just look at the things that are happening in Lakeland school system in academics, in athletics, in the arts, it's just almost an embarrassment of riches. Having been to the Matilda Junior, and I shouldn't start naming them because there's just so much going on, but we're getting just incredible results for the band program, the orchestra program, the theater program. There's an art show coming up. I mean, and this is both at the elementary school level and at the middle school level. The recorder concert was apparently packed out and kind of stunned everyone with the level of interest in the recorder. Sometimes instruments make a comeback. Maybe the recorder's time is back. But just lots of, again, what we're used to. But particularly, I think, as we're coming out of the pandemic, seeing these parents and kids return to performance and doing things in person, it's really just been unbelievable to see. Athletics, we've got some undefeated teams right now. We've got new teams that are doing great things. Track and field is brand new, and the girls just won the girls' side of a track meet as a brand new team. The varsity baseball and soccer are both undefeated, incredibly. Swim meet, swim team wrapping up their season. Again, I shouldn't start trying to name them, but it's really just.
We might be here all night.
It's just kind of an unbelievable thing. I mean, any night of the week, if you want to go see some kids in Lakeland doing just terrific things, you can do it at either school, really. So just so proud of them.
And new things.
And new things that
Lacrosse,
have not been offered in our school system, have not been offered in neighboring, the community school systems, and just folks picking up the ball and literally sometimes and running with it. So it's great. Pardon the accidental pun there. I did want to note there was a conversation last month about having a Renaissance group visit with us. They are planning to be here next week if that's what winds up happening. And they are starting some of the work on the central office and are requesting a survey so they can do the civil engineer work there. On the construction update, anybody that drives by can see how quickly the outside of the school is changing. That's one of the exciting things. When the block work goes up, it kind of seems like it takes a long time, and then the brick and stone start to go up, and it just happens really quickly. I was very pleased to be able to offer a tour to the Board of Education, some members of the Board of Commissioners, and recently the LPS administration, including 2 new administrators that took the tour with us, and that's been very exciting. Woods Construction tells us that they are on schedule. That's a question I know everybody gets. Are they going to be able to pull this off? They believe they can. I'm glad it's not me trying to pull it off myself, I guess, but they got a lot of work to do. They are working weekends, they are working evenings, they are working, Sundays, every bit of daylight and good weather that they can take advantage of, they are. This is kind of breaking news. There is one area of the front of the school that's one of the better areas to use for recess right now, and they're going to have to work in that area. So recess may have some changes at LPS. I think our middle school has one of the best recess programs of any middle school in Shelby County. So I want everybody to just kind of give us some grace if there are some modifications, including maybe alternating outdoor recess days. It's just one of the costs of construction on an active campus. So just kind of be prepared for that as that breaks. That concludes my regular report. I will note we typically at the work session we do the finance report. We had some budget changes come in on the federal grants and the federal budget that Ms. Rosales had to go back and redo, along with a budget change in the general fund that has to do with some computers that we want to get ordered early. So we will wind up bringing those to the business meeting and reporting on that then as well. Both the report is not there, and then when we get down to the budget amendments, we'll take that up at the next meeting. So that concludes my report.
Any questions for the superintendent on the superintendent's report? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item.
Next item is the approval of the agenda for a work session that's not needed. We don't have anything there on the consent agenda, so Mr. Chairman, if we can move on to the discussion items. The approval of the business meeting minutes from March 7th, 2022.
Any discussion on this item? Objection to carrying this item over to our consent agenda? Hearing no objection, we'll carry this over to our consent agenda. Next item.
All right, next item is the presentation on the fiscal year 2022-23 budget.
Dr. Horrell, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to try to take this from up here. Let me make just a couple of changes to the stream here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the presentation on the screen, on the streaming.
While he's getting ready, I'll remind each board member that they have an opportunity to schedule an individual appointment with Dr. Horrell to go over the budget in detail. So if you haven't done that, like myself, now's the time to do it. I need to go ahead and schedule that, but it's time.
4 have, Chairman Floyd, so you've already outed yourself.
And the last shall be first.
The last shall be first.
Go ahead, Dr. Horrell.
Okay, all right, and thank you for noting that. Let me just say, first of all, I want to recognize Jessie Rosales, our finance director. She's away on professional development. She actually had to leave tonight. She was willing to be here, and then was going to get in the car and drive to this conference after the meeting, and I told her, please go to the conference, and she will be available, though, for your questions, certainly over the course of this next week, and we'll make sure we get those answered before we vote, if there are any questions. And then the other person lots of people put a lot of work into here and into this, but Jessica Millspaw also in HR, just because the vast majority of the budget has to do with personnel cost. She does a lot of calculations for us as well. We have Angie DeLoso here in the audience, our assistant superintendent, that does tremendous amount of work with the rest of our staff on curriculum and materials and things like that. Again, if I start naming people, I'll miss somebody, but I appreciate everybody's work on this, and I think what we have is a very, as always, our goal is to be fiscally conservative and fiscally responsible, and I think this budget does that while also meeting the needs of our growing and changing school system. So What I like to do for this presentation is just start with the budget assumptions and give everybody an idea. In our school system, there's always something new. They don't stay, they have not really stayed stable in terms of the numbers, and we'll see that for the next 4 years as we add grade levels and the requisite personnel to serve those grade levels. And just a reminder for everybody, this is the budget in which we move from a K-8 system to a K-9 system. So we're anticipating 2,081 students, which would be an increase of 250. That 250 includes, obviously, the 8th grade moving into the 9th grade, but also the anticipated growth that we anticipate in the other grades. What we're anticipating in our projections is 991 students at Lakeland Elementary School with a projected increase of 13 students. 1,090 students at LPS with an increase of 237. That means 68 regular ed teachers at LES and 65 regular ed teachers at LPS. So that's an increase we're budgeting of 17 additional teachers at LPS. Yes, Chairman Floyd.
Dr. Horrell, could you explain for those who may not know why you need less teachers at LPS even though you have more students?
Absolutely. The most expensive group of students to educate is elementary school students because the student-teacher ratios are so much smaller. There's and particularly in our system, if we can pull it off, we try to start at that kind of 17 number, and as the grades get higher, then those ratios kind of go up. So that's basically the reason there, and it's a great question. Bit counterintuitive, but yes.
Can you also address the 991 of which students or which grades at LES?
Thank you. The 991 is only the K through 4. It does not include the rapidly growing special ed preschool
And the typical peers.
and the typical peers that we serve at the school. So the actual number of warm bodies, student bodies in the building will be north of 1,000 as it has been for some time. All right, we say this every year, and we've held to it so far as we go into year 9, year 9 as the school system. We're no request for additional operational funds from the city of Lakeland. There is a 15-cent equivalent that's required by state law, property tax equivalent that they do contribute for operational funds. And there are some assumptions here that are important to note, especially as we start to look at the budget. We have an MOU with the city of Lakeland where we pay them $700,000 per year of our fund balance in order to cover debt service for the loan to build the high school. And just as a reminder, I know the board obviously knows this, our approach was at the time that the high school funding was being debated, there was some thought that the city would wait 4 years until the Lake District and some other income generating developments came online. The board's proposal was that we use our fund balance to basically buy those extra years so that we would take care of those debt service payments for that 4 years. The intention was always that we would pay those out of fund balance. I will note that for the last 2 years, we have been able to squeeze that into the operational budget. We have budgeted it to come out of fund balance, but it really didn't wind up coming out of fund balance because we had either more revenues or less expenditures than we anticipated. So that's a good thing, and we'll see if that holds true this time, but we do work under the assumption that that'll come out of fund balance. We are also working under the assumption for this year that the approximately $130,000 that we will use to pay for our seats in Arlington Community Schools at Arlington High School would come out of fund balance as well. That number will, assuming that students every year, the majority of students every year go to Lakeland Prep and not Arlington High School, that number will start to go down each year as well over the course of the next 4 years. Yes, Mr. Burnett.
And Dr. Harwell, for everyone listening, that $700,000, this is year 3.
This is year 3 of 4.
So.
That's correct. That's correct.
That was my,
Same question.
yeah.
Okay, so continue on.
I'll also note, I've shared this, I shared this on our tour, that push to start building early and go ahead and kind of buy those 4 years. We're building a high school right now that construction cost alone was $40 million, just under $40 million. And we are told, and I'm sure anybody who is purchasing anything of any sort right now won't be surprised by this, but they're saying that same set of construction plans would cost $60 million to build if we were to put it out to bid right now. So. Thoughts?
You mentioned for next school year, it would be $130,000 for at ACS for Lakeland High students. What's it been for this school year?
I would have to research that, but I can have that
Okay.
for you at the next meeting for sure, or at our budget conversation. We could probably do it roughly. I think if you took that 130 and divided it by 3 and multiplied it by 4, whoever's good at the math, that you'd come up with it pretty close, so. All right, sorry.
Again, we need those math teachers to apply.
Well, yeah, anyone, or if Jesse or Jessica were here, they could do it in their head too. All right, so basically what that leads us to, based on the increased number of students and other factors, we also are increasing the amount of sales tax. One of the things that came out of the pandemic that was, I think, surprising to a lot of municipalities and school systems was that the sales tax actually did go up during the pandemic. People stayed at home and continued to buy, and we haven't seen a drop-off in those numbers either. So a total increase in the general fund, and I do want to be clear, this is just the general fund. It doesn't include the grants. It doesn't include nutrition. Actually, our LEAP program is its own fund, and the board will get copies of all that, as will the public for the next meeting. So the general fund budgeted revenues from 19 million just about to closer to 22 million for an increase in a little over $2.8 million. This budget also includes step increases to all employees on step schedules. And I know that seems like an obvious thing. A step increase is when an employee gets one more year worth of credit, as some of the salary schedules provide for. However, I will note that there are some school systems that when they give increases in the salary schedule across the board, they don't do both. They may do a 2% increase, cost of living increase, and not the step. They may take a year off from the step. That's not uncommon at all. We have never done that in our school system. So every year that we've done a 2% increase in the salary schedule, we have also honored the step increases. This budget contemplates that, and that is a 2% salary schedule increase across the board. I think, again, we're all aware of what inflation has done and is doing. I made a note, regardless of any revisions to the governor's education budget. The governor has said that his budget wish list includes more money for teacher salaries. I will note that for a couple of reasons, that doesn't wind up covering all of our teacher salaries at the same percentage that they tend to talk about, and one of those reasons is that our teachers are among the highest paid in the state, and the other reason is that typically, at least of late, the governor and the legislature wants to make sure that salary increases only go to teachers and not classified staff, not to administrators, in some cases not to guidance counselors, depending on the definition that they're using. Obviously feel like everybody in our school system should have that benefit. So that winds up being, just if you want an idea of what a 2% increase looks like, it's $262,000.
Well,
Yes, sir.
while we're on salaries, are you comfortable that our salaries are competitive with other municipal school districts surrounding our area?
I know for a fact that they are, because there's a report that comes out every year, and we compare, and we are always right in line.
Very good, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Somehow started. Okay. This budget also builds in the 2% increase to health insurance premiums for the 22-23 school year. I do want to note that and it's, again, it's hard to believe, but also most people would understand it because they see it. Health insurance premiums and costs on an average, kind of the national book of business, go up from 7 to 9% every year. We've been on a good run lately with the Health Trust. Last year we had no increase at all. That is the exception, but we felt like it was important if we could do it, to do that for our employees, especially in the COVID year. But we are building in the Health Trust that we do as a consortium with other school systems and cities in Shelby County did vote in a 2% increase to health insurance premiums. I wanted to note we were able to put 7 positions into grants that came out of the CARES Act money, the ESSER money that came from the federal government. Some of those were those early hires of high school positions, and it was allowable under the grant to do that, and the high school counselor and some things that we did. Those dollars are going back into the general fund budget to the tune of about $400,000. Some of these are a little bit repetitive of what we said before, but we're going to add 17 regular ed teachers at LPS, 1 additional special ed teacher at LPS, and 1 speech language pathologist at LPS. I want to make a comment about the 17 regular ed teachers at LPS. I think you could correctly note that seems like a lot of teachers for 1 grade level. We're talking about somewhere, between 180 and maybe 210 students in the 9th grade. One of the things that I think is important, I think the board believes is important, is to make sure that we get off on the right foot with offering these high school grades. We've been talking about it for a long time. Logically and maybe fiscally, it would make sense to say, well, if you've got a teacher that's maybe not going to be teaching a full schedule of that high school course, or they're not going to have the program completely built out, maybe we should hire a part-time person until we have more kids to fund those programs. And that's really not been our approach. We're trying to be as smart as we can, but obviously we want to offer foreign languages. We are excited to be offering both Spanish and French. And we have found teachers that can teach both Spanish and French. We want to get our kids started on the CTE paths that we're determined to be desirable to our parents and to our kids. And we've got some professionals coming in that we're really excited about that'll start those programs. And in some cases, we had more than 1 person come in for a particular content area. And it was such a good opportunity, again, to build towards those high school classes that we're doing some kind of changes to the schedules, including offering some things to our middle school students in the meantime that we might not have been able to offer prior to that. So in other words, I don't anticipate adding 17 teachers every year for the next 4 years, but particularly for this first year, it seemed like certainly educationally the right thing to do, and then financially, if we can possibly pull it off, the right thing to do and give these teachers the opportunity to build these programs. We're also adding a special ed assistant at LPS, 2 clerical positions at LPS, and 1 assistant principal at LES, as well as an assistant principal at LPS. I'll make a note on the assistant principal at LES. Particularly, and this is frankly probably been overdue at LES. It is a large elementary school. If we look at peer elementary schools, even in Shelby County, you'll find some that have between 500 and 600. You'll have some, 700 or 800 is a large one. Ours is particularly large, and I think we've made good decisions in terms of keeping grade bands together and making sure that all kids in a grade go to the same school. But I think increasingly as academic expectations, assessment expectations, and then really even behavioral issues that we see that we've talked about that kind of have moved down in the grade levels at some point, I think adding that extra assistant principal to the elementary school is the right thing to do. And we are also, I think conceivably we could have moved forward with the principal, a vice principal, and 2 APs at Lakeland Preparatory School, but again, in the interest of making sure that discipline is handled appropriately in a growing school and we set the right tone there, making sure that the myriad athletic and arts events that we have talked about can all be covered. I also think it's the right decision to go ahead and add that additional assistant principal at LPS. And we're very excited about the two individuals that we're adding to the team. I can't say much more about them. One is to backfill Ms. Martin's position that's currently being filled by Tammy Beauvais. She intends to return to her instructional supervisor position, which has been unfilled this whole time. She's basically been doing a lot of both jobs on that. But excited about those individuals and look forward to everybody in the community meeting them. As part of that, again, getting ahead of things, addition of 5 custodians at LPS, 3 full-time and 2 part-time. I do want to note we're going to have, in addition to the tripling the square footage of the building, we've got a lot of athletic facilities that are all going to need maintenance and garbage cans emptied and things cleaned up. So we think those positions will be well utilized. And then in addition of 3 nutrition technicians, I think as the board and most people know, we have added a second basically cafeteria area that would be presumably and eventually for the high school students. It is a little more square footage than the current cafeteria, so we're more than doubling the seating area for the school system, or for the school rather. And that food will be prepared in the kitchen that was initially built to accommodate a school of 2,000 plus eventually, and then it'll be transported in heating and cooling containers across the hall and into the full serving line that's in the new nutrition area. Also includes funds for 10th grade Chromebooks and teacher devices. I know you would think, well, the 9th graders would get the new devices. They've actually already got newer devices, so as the Chromebooks kind of meet the end of their life, we backfill those as part of our plan. Also have an increase for LPS Utilities of $100,000. I will note that at the time when we built the middle school, it was, in our determination, prohibitively expensive to go ahead and move to LED. It seems like a short time ago, but at that time, it was more expensive to put in LED, and that has flipped in the meantime. So the high school does have LED lights, which will be cheaper in terms of, the year-to-year utility bills, including the athletic facilities. The current football field has halogen lights, and the new ones have the LED lights. Right, and then really finally, I do want to note the budget provides essentially startup funds for numerous high school specific initiatives covering athletics, academics, the arts, coaches, stipends. Again, these are things that we're paying folks as if they have full programs in many cases, keeping in mind that in some ways next year will be even more challenging not having those programs and making decisions about who do you play and who plays and how often do you play and where do you play and things like that. But again, there's a lot of energy right now, I think, a lot of positive energy in terms of taking on those challenges and what next year looks like, and some of the individuals that we've got coming in are really fired up to have the opportunity to build these programs from the ground up. And I think that's going to be exciting both for the staff and the students. So what this means, this will require, beyond the fund balance that we discussed earlier, about $370,000 of fund balance to be put towards the transition to high school grades. And again, as we've seen in the past, we have budgeted for fund balance previously, and so far not actually had to decrease the fund balance. In most cases, we've been able to improve our fund balance position every year. This year I will note, this year may be the exception to that, because between the $700,000, the ACS payments that are basically scheduled for fund balance, and then this additional planned fund balance, that would be, might possibly be the first time that we don't build the fund balance at the end of 22-23. But if someone were to have asked at any point over the last 8 years, what is the goal of continually building the fund balance, it would have been to get ready for the high school, really. We've in many ways, we've been building towards this, obviously, since the inception of the system. So I feel like, despite that, I feel like it's a fiscally conservative and responsible. And that concludes the overview. We'll have, like I said, we'll have posted the actual line items for next week's meeting, and have the opportunity to speak to each board member individually and get questions answered.
I will note that on the 370 that we're using from fund balance, the other alternative would be to ask the city for those funds, which would affect their budget, maybe create a tax increase for our citizens. So we're glad, or at least I'm glad, to use the money we have to make sure that the city can operate at the same level that it has been. And we've been planning for this day, and we've been able to do it. So we're fortunate.
Agreed.
I will ask one other question, Dr. Horrell, and I asked it about the teacher salaries, but on coaches' stipends, are we comfortable that they're competitive with other districts in our area as well?
We are, and that's a great question. I had that conversation with Ms. Millspaw recently because she's, as the HR director, she's the one that typically makes the offers directly. And she has found that basically when she talks to coaches that are either coming from other systems, either in our community or outside, that she feels like we are comparable. So we've obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious to most people, we've increased those substantially over the last 2 years, I think. And we're still making some tweaks. I actually have a meeting with the athletic leadership at the middle school, soon to be high school, on Friday to kind of go over that stipend list and just see from the feedback they're getting and the feedback we've gotten, are there further tweaks? But I do feel like we're in a good position right now.
Any other questions for the superintendent, Ms. Harrison?
So I know you talked about taking from fund balance. Can you give an approximate amount that would leave?
Give me just 1 second.
I know we've had conversations here repeatedly about a new road that has to be built, and
Yes.
at this point, we're gonna be responsible for building it if the Jones do, so,
Right, I can give you some level of detail there if everybody's good with that. Right now, and this is prior to, obviously, we're coming to the end of the 21-22 school year. We do anticipate adding to fund balance again this year. We're always very hesitant to commit to a number or say how much, but we do anticipate adding to that. But as of right now in fund balance, we have nearly $7.3 million balance. There is a state minimum, 3% of your budgeted expenditures that you have to put on reserve, and this is based on what's coming up. That's about $700,000. We've got the future extension of Campus Drive, which we anticipate being between $2.5 and $3 million. Have lined in the budget deficit anticipated for the use of fund balance for this year's budget. So, and I don't want to get into where it would wind up with the anticipated fund balance, but it does, you know, we get a lot closer kind of down to the precipice after that, under $1 million, but then you add back what we anticipate over this next year and then the next couple of years.
so I think I have the numbers right. So for administration, as far as, starting the next school year, we anticipate at LPS, principal, 1 vice principal, 4 assistant principals. Was that the right count? Or-
3 assistant
Three
principals.
assistant
Principal, vice principal, 3 assistant principals.
Okay,
Yep.
and then at Lakeland Elementary, it's principal and 3 assistant principals.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for the superintendent?
Look forward to meeting with each of you.
Very good. Dr. Horrell, next item.
Next item is discussion action on update to policy 4.600 grading system. Yeah, this was actually asked to bring it forward to this month. There were some questions about the requirement in the policy that says that students in AP classes are required to take the exam or they don't get the additional points added to the grade. I shared some information with the board members earlier today that I hope answers the question. I can go back and do some more research. Basically, Ms. Decker researched and said that there is a makeup test, but it is in the summer. So again, it complicates that question about if Ms. Harrison in particular asked, well, what if you just can't do it? What if you're sick and you just can't get to the test? Unfortunately, it looks like the opportunity to make that up would be certainly post-graduation. time when folks would need those transcripts that had that final determination made. The other question I was asked to explore, or maybe even brought up myself, was about the EPSOs, because that is part of the state accountability model for high schools, and you have to take the AP exam for it to count as an EPSO, so a post-secondary opportunity.
With that information, Sarah Harrison, do you have any comments or discussion on the policy?
No, I was actually seeing that there's an opportunity to make it up. I mean, that's a big deal when you're talking about final grades and things like that, because they don't just take AP courses your senior year, you take
That's right.
them all the years. So certainly getting your GPA right can be fixed over the summer when you actually can take it. So I was happy to see that there was a makeup opportunity, and there's not a, like, you miss it and you're done.
Right.
So it sounds like there's ease for this to be as flexible as it can be within the state guidelines for not completely stripping the student away from their opportunity when they've worked so hard through the course. So I get it that in the summer it's not convenient, certainly, but if they're having to miss the state exam, obviously something extenuating that happened where they had to miss the state exam. So I was pleased to hear that there was an opportunity for makeup. And not lose for all the coursework that they had done for the whole year.
My question would be, that being said, are we comfortable with that policy then to move it off of the business meeting agenda?
Agenda?
Well, we don't have,
No, we
it's already.
voted,
already-
yeah,
yes,
that's right.
yes.
That's right. Are there any,
I'm comfortable with it from the further information we've gained.
Right,
I think the board's comfortable removing this item.
okay. Next item is discussion action on approval of policy 4.604, credit for prior courses, and this would be considered a first reading since it is a work session.
Dr. Horrell?
This is a new policy, a new one from scratch, and it basically talks about the circumstances under which a student would get high school credit for a course taken in the 8th grade. I will note that this policy basically gives the superintendent and school administration quite a bit of flexibility in determining whether or not 8th grade courses could count for high school credit. One of the, and we've talked about this, but it's nice to bring it up since it is an advantage. One of the advantages of having middle school and high school students in the same building is having high school certified teachers available to teach middle school students. So whereas a lot of schools will allow students to get high school credit for a limited number of classes, like it's very typically Spanish 1, Algebra 1, Physical Science. We're already basically putting in practice, assuming that this gets passed, that students could take French 1 just as they take Spanish 1. Again, most middle schools wouldn't have somebody that could teach both Spanish and French, but we could. There's actually a number of courses we could explore, and there are pros and cons of offering credit to 8th graders, and we're already having conversations about thinking ahead. What does the next 4 years look like if somebody does get too much of a head start? So we obviously have to use some discernment, but what this policy does is basically say that in American history, that one's not allowed. You still have to take 4 math courses in high school no matter what happens in the 8th grade. It basically lays out the requirements that would allow the administration to make that decision. It does note that the superintendent would make the final decisions as to which courses taken in middle school may count as the equivalent of a high school course.
Discussion on this item? Harrison?
So if I'm reading it correctly, like a CTE course, if we had a 9th grader or 8th grader could enroll in like your first part of your health science or whatever potentially, is that where this would be applicable?
That is one example of where it would be applicable.
So any of those type that aren't specified by the State Board of Education that you take 9 through 12 or whatever, then those could even translate down to the 8th grade if we saw fit that
Correct.
needed. Okay.
What's then Ms. Childs?
With the alignment of the schedules that we've talked about, that also allows that to happen because they're operating in the same time constraints so that you don't have a high school course that's 55 minutes long and a middle school course that's 45 minutes long, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be gaps. If a teacher's teaching a class, they could be teaching combinations, they could be teaching middle, they could be teaching high school.
Ms. Childs?
Is math the only one, is it the only subject that requires you to basically take a fifth one if you take it early? Best if you took, I guess we already do that, but like science, you could just knock one of the, I believe it's 3 out. You wouldn't have to.
No, I thought you had to take 3 sciences. in
There's
high
still
school.
3 required, but not
Yes.
4, but not 4.
Correct, you
Right.
don't have to take the 4th one, but yeah, you still have to take 3 in high school.
It's is only offered at the,
You can take it in high school, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so, and obviously you would make sure students are aware of that, you know, because math is the weird one where you have to still take another, and it will be a harder one if you choose it early.
Right.
So.
Comments or discussion on this policy? Hearing none, we'll carry this item over to our regular agenda since it's a first reading and have the second reading at our business meeting. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on the FY 21-22 budget amendments that I noted will have to be brought forth at the business meeting.
So we'll just carry this item over to our regular agenda. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on approval of the 23-24 instructional calendar.
Oral?
We did as we have done traditionally, and we work with our partners in Arlington Community Schools. We typically, and did this time as well, let them take the lead, although they are definitely consult with me, and we have the opportunity to give feedback into that calendar. So what you see before you is a calendar with a first day for students on August 7th of 2023. And again, just so anybody listening, that is 2 years out. This is not next year's calendar. Before Michelle Childs was even on the board, we took her suggestion and started pushing 2 years ahead on the calendars. And it's got a last day of school of May 16th. It includes the same flex days for professional development, so it is a 175 school day calendar, which I think has been a success in our school system, and balanced 87 days in the first semester, 88 days in the second, so that's well.
Ms. Childs?
I know we share buses with more than just Arlington. Do we know if theirs will be similar, or like, do we still coordinate with the other municipalities?
So the plan is, and this is reflected in our budget as well, in the transportation budget, the plan is that we would not share any buses next year, and that
Right,
decision was
we
made
have-
with the
okay.
8:15
That's right.
and 9 split, so.
So many things, exciting things to
yes,
get used to.
yes.
Okay, that's true, okay.
Any other equipment, Ms. Harrison?
No, in the past, we've had Veterans Day. I don't see it on here. Is that a
It's on a
change?
weekend.
It's on the weekend? Okay. Out, and normally in the past, we've gotten out like on a Friday. I see that, or students get out on a Friday, so they're moving to Wednesday and then going back on a Thursday.
And for the winter holidays.
Yeah, for the winter
Yeah,
holiday.
I think it happens sometimes based on when Christmas and New Year's is.
Hadn't happened in several years, so that's why I'm asking the question, like, do we foresee challenges with people just coming back, students coming back 2 days and then, with making sure that instructional time is productive and things like that? I know, if they're only coming back 2 days, sometimes it's different than coming back for the first full week and you're back to school, so I just posit that because I want to make sure that we're going from 180 to 175, make sure those 175 days are
Sure.
as quality as we can. So I just want to, was there any discussion about
If-
concerns there?
If your question is it ideal, the answer is probably not. But you can look at the first day of the semester and the last day of the semester, and if you see that you've got to get, these days in, let's see, if you're coming back and going Thursday and Friday that week, shove it 2 days, then all of a sudden you've shoved the last day of school to the next week. So you finish your last day of school is on a Monday. It's just one of those where when you move the blocks, it moves everything proportionally.
And normally they get out on a Friday and they're getting out on a Thursday, am I reading that?
Yes, and I think that's related to that Thursday, Friday start and the idea that a Thursday, Friday is at least better than just coming back for one day.
They're getting out on the 16th? So we're moving up 4 days earlier, they're getting out in May?
Actually, this month,
just
this
curious.
year
I'm
is
trying to-
earlier than normal, a lot of ways, because typically we're off the Friday before Memorial Day. This year it's a whole week before. In fact, I'll note that some of our neighbors are coming back Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday the following week this year, after the Friday that we get off.
8th grade promotion the 19th, and then Friday, the 20th is a half-day for the kids, right?
I'd have to check, but that sounds right.
Trying to
I know.
get
think
to
about the right year.
2024, right,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the right year. This essentially would be it'd be a week and a half before Memorial Day, is that right? They would get
Yeah.
out?
Yeah. And that this Thursday is not the Thursday before Memorial Day, it's 2 Thursdays before Memorial.
In this calendar, January 1st is on a Monday, so that's part of the reason, because that's going to be a holiday regardless. So that's part of the reason every few years it gets wonky when the first and the 25th not fall exactly the way you.
Is the thought that they're getting out, or everybody's getting out the 20th or 6 days, so, because you want so many days before Christmas? Travel, things like that, if people were going, I mean, I'm just trying to understand, like, what, we're getting out on a Wednesday, which seems,
Well, if you didn't get out, in-service would have to be this
that's what
day
I'm looking,
almost.
I'm trying to
Right.
look at
Because
get to the
Christmas
right
is on
year.
Monday, I believe.
During Christmas, it's usually 10 days for students, and so 10 school days, so I think it's just like having to shift it.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just thinking 2 years out, I'm just trying to look at.
And then the other thing that obviously, as I noted, comes into play is the goal is to balance the semesters
Right.
like that. Because
Yes.
there are some schedules where you kind of fix all this stuff and then it's like 95, 78, which the teachers don't like, or you've got quarters ending weeks before Christmas because
Where we have 2 days here, 1 day here, two broken up, where we're gonna have enough continuity and flow where it's gonna be.
my experience, and Ms. Deloso's here too, you have teachers come back and they've got 2 days to teach. I know it may be counterintuitive. Really well rested and energetic and kind of,
2 days till the
feeling
weekend.
good and ready to go. I mean, 2 days till
Yeah.
the weekend. As
Yeah.
opposed to, and I guess you could think they might say, well, it's just 2 days, I'll just blow it off. That's not been kind of my experience, is that if they have these short weeks, then rock it for the 2 or 3 days that they're in.
Well, and it's different from days in the second semester be the same as 2 days in the beginning of the first semester. Because that's all the, beginning of school.
Right.
They can hit the ground running Thursday morning. The perfect plan gets laid to by,
Right,
so
right.
we could plan for them to start on a Monday again, then we would have, sub-zero temperatures and whatnot, which is always a wild card in the spring, in the spring semester anyway.
Further discussion on this item? Are we comfortable placing this on our consent agenda? Hearing no objection, we'll carry this item over to our consent agenda. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on the nomination of TSBA Volunteer of the Year.
Ms. Thomas, I see your name beside this item.
I'm gonna pitch back to Dr. Horrell on this one because everyone spoke to Dr. Horrell individually, and so I'm gonna let you update everyone on that.
Yep, we've gotten some feedback. Thank you to the board members that have sent some feedback on the Volunteer of the Year. We will bring a name to the business meeting next week.
Good, so we'll carry this item over to our regular agenda. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on the spring 2022 discard list.
Dr. Horrell?
This basically has two items, and this is, I think, the first time we've seen this. These are these waves of Chromebooks, and when we invested in Chromebooks versus iPads or MacBooks or those things, we went into it knowing that Chromebooks typically, in kind of a worst-case scenario, have a 3-year span of life. We've been able to get 4 to 5 years out of them, so this is our first 2 batches that we bought. I hope the board agrees. I certainly feel like that approach has been a wise one for our school system. They allow for a lot of district level management and security and monitoring, and that's really just more about Chromebooks. But board policy says that the board has to approve it if we have property that we are getting rid of or unloading in some way. So the proposal here is to try to keep the hard drives. I'm not sure they do with the hard drives at that point, then they recycle the rest of the.
Any discussion on this item? None. Any objection to carrying this item over to our consent agenda? Hearing no objection, we'll carry this item over to our consent agenda. Next item.
Next item is review of the policy manual, section 6.
Any discussion on this item?
We'll have a report on that next week.
Very good. We'll carry this over to our regular agenda. Dr. Horrell, is there any other business?
There's no further items. I do know there was some conversations about possible conflicts on the scheduled date of our business meeting, so I wanted to bring that to the board in case there was some discussion.
Any discussion on our business meeting, which is scheduled for next Monday?
You have a conflict on Monday, and since it's budget season, I know I would like to be here to,
I do think that that's an important vote, and I think everyone should have the right to voice their opinion on it. Is there a suggested date? Dr. Horrell, is
If
there
I
any
could
dates that are good for you?
Throw out, yeah, I have a conflict Tuesday actually, but could do it Wednesday, either at 5:45, or if we wanted to move it up early, we could do that. I'd leave that up to the board.
How does Wednesday look for everyone? Wednesday of next week.
I can't.
Ms. Childs is not available on Wednesday. I say this 10,000, this is the hardest thing we do, is try to coordinate calendars. All right, so Dr. Horrell, we'll start with you. Are there any other good dates for you?
But I didn't, I meant to, I know the Board of Commissioners is doing their readings, and I'm trying to figure out if they have to have the approved budget from us. I think they have to have it
I
by
don't
that
think they'll
Thursday.
approve theirs for a while.
Have done, like I said, I can't do it. There are times I could do it Tuesday.
What about a week from Monday?
18th?
The
Yes.
18th, yeah.
We normally meet on Mondays.
I had Tuesday and Wednesday next week, or
Childs?
I'm not sure. I'll have to see if I can, get one to take my son to an away game if, we do it that day.
Well, then, is there a day that is good for everyone?
is there an earlier time we could do it?
I
Would
can
that,
do most Tuesdays,
would that
but
accommodate people? No, after school things, April and May are almost impossible,
Yeah.
because all our kids are doing stuff and we have to go to different meetings for that stuff. Is there an earlier time in the day that we could?
Not saying, I don't know, but would 4 be impossible for those that have work and everything?
What day are we talking about?
I mean, I don't, I mean,
Would
I'm
4
even
o'clock
available.
Wednesday work for you, Ms. Jones? Or is Wednesday just bad altogether?
Well, I have to leave by 4:30. I have that, but it's,
We might could do it on Thursday. We could probably be done by the time the BOC starts. What about 4 o'clock on Thursday? Would have to be done by 5:30.
I
The
can't do
7th or
this
the 14th?
Thursday.
Or the 7th, either one. But Ms. Child says she's not available.
You said this Thursday though, right? I think.
Yeah,
Next
this Thursday.
Would everybody have had the chance to have their budget?
I mean, what about next Thursday?
What about the 14th?
Yeah, I could probably do it 4 on that day.
Burnett's looking doubtful.
I'm just not sure.
I have to,
I mean,
at least one other person on my team will be there so I can push that.
All right, let me ask this. If it's 4 o'clock, I'd have to be done by about 5:15, but on Tuesday of next week, I could do 4 o'clock.
Is that the 12th?
The
Maybe I'm
12th.
looking at the right.
Okay, the 12th, I think that.
Matt, are you good on the 12th?
I'll make that happen.
You good on the 12th as well? Ms. Childs?
Yes.
Yes.
4 o'clock, Tuesday, 12th. Dr. Horrell, will you make sure that an announcement goes out that we're canceling our meeting for Monday and it's rescheduled for the 12th at 4?
Well, and it'll have to be a special call meeting.
It'll be a special called meeting,
meeting.
which will limit our discussion only to
Yes.
agenda items.
Yes. So everything that was from the agenda that we said to go for the next one will be on there, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, because I'd hate to miss that discussion, so.
My own preference is also that every board member is at a budget vote, so I mean, I appreciate everybody's flexibility on that too, so.
It's a $22 million decision. We should all
It's a
be
big
here.
one,
Yes.
yeah.
All right, any other business that needs to come before the board? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.